Of any program on WURD Radio do not necessarily reflect those of ownership, management, or advertisers of this station.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Chris Murray Report on WURD. Well, as always, we got a lot of things to talk about, a lot of stuff to kind of get into today in terms of the world of sports. First of all, last night, I want to start. We got a lot to talk about. Last night, I was watching the women's Final Four, South Carolina and Stanford, and of course, our old friend Dawn Staley, who coached at Temple for so many years, was leading the charge as the head coach for South Carolina. And it was a really close game I don't know if you saw it last night, Jordan.
Yep, I did.
Game.
I did. And that last play of the game was kind of heartbreaking when South Carolina got that steal. Oh man, I was hurt for them.
Yeah, Brea Beal missed the layup, and then Aaliyah Boston put back, and you saw the tears on Boston's face after the shot. I couldn't believe. I mean, but the thing about and what's frustrating about that game is with Dawn Staley's team is that they have been pushing pushing Stanford on that mountain the whole game. They were just at this point, they were like maybe at a window of about maybe 4 or 5 points back. And I'm sitting there and it's hard. And then when you finally get the lead, and then Stanford gets that shot. Stanford gets a huge shot coming down the stretch by we'll try to get the young lady's name here by oh boy, let me think. It was I can't think of it. I'm sitting here looking at the headlines in this, but the thing is, South Carolina had fought the entire game. And they were down in that window. And I'm saying to myself, at some point, they've got to take over. They've got to do something. And they had all the opportunity there to win it and ice it. And then it was just one of those things where you just had to, oh boy, you really just had to say, you had to embrace the young lady who I think it was Haley Jones for Stanford, who just put the ball back in. You saw Russell Wilson's sister play in that game, too. And just a heartbreaker. And then Arizona just steamrolled Connecticut last night. That was a shocker, too. But you have one black woman coach in the finals, and you have a situation where, you almost had 2 black coaches in the national championship game, and at the end of that game is tomorrow night on ESPN. I think the game is at 8 tomorrow. You can check that out. But great game. I love this time. I love Final Four. I love basketball.
Sure.
I covered a lot of high school basketball, and I love going to. I covered a lot of girls' tournaments. I covered a lot of boys. I covered all the major tournaments, and always fun to watch. Always fun to watch. And you just, like I say again, you watch these games, and people don't appreciate how exciting. Yeah, no, there's not a lot of dunking in women's basketball, although that is coming. That is coming. And that's definitely going to come in the sport soon. But the thing is, it's good fundamental basketball.
Yep.
It's exciting.
Lot of effort being put in every game and stuff. So a lot of effort, and also just like it's pure skill. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. You're right, Jordan. There's a lot of effort, and that's right. Adia Barnes, who's the coach of Stanford women, she led. She was in the WNBA for a time, and she led Stanford. But you're right. I mean, it was just, and the thing about it, the women's game, you feel the emotion of a tournament run more. I mean, you just feel the emotion of it, and you feel, and that's not. I hope I'm not saying that as a stereotype, but I'm talking about. I mean, you feel emotion in men's sports too, but the intensity is what you're feeling there of the game, and I think that just good to watch. Just a great game to watch. I'm looking forward to watching the championship game tomorrow night. Kind of hoping to see Dawn in them, but they didn't get there, so we'll still watch. Now, a couple of things in the news before. Because we're going to talk some Eagles today, some NBA, some Sixers. One thing we are going to talk about, and I'm going to bring. I hadn't planned on talking to John Mitchell about this, but John Mitchell will be on in our last segment at 12:30. But we're going to talk about the MLB All-Star Game being pulled from Atlanta in response to basically the voter suppression law they just passed in the state of Georgia. Now, a lot of people, I saw one article out there that's saying that it's going to hurt people in Georgia, but I think that it's the right move for MLB. And the reason why I say that, I look back a little bit to 1964, and when the AFL, the old AFL, had their All-Star game in New Orleans, and the black players were treated so poorly by everybody there in terms of, where they could go, where they could sit down, and you couldn't even be fed, and they couldn't even go to restaurants and order a drink or anything like that. So basically, the black players at that time got together and said, "Look, we're not going to play in this All-Star game because you're not treating us right." And they actually moved the game to Houston, of all places. And so when you look at what happened with MLB, I think it's I'm glad that they did that. I mean, I'm happy they did that because mainly because that voter restriction law, those voter suppression laws. And I probably had it right the first time, repression actually, was in response to Georgia going blue in the fall election, voting for Biden over Trump, and sending 2 Democrats to the United States Senate. And so what they wanted to do was stop people from voting. And one of the worst of the laws in that situation, 2 of the worst laws in that situation was, one, if the state legislature didn't like the results of the election, they wouldn't certify the election. They won't certify. So if a Democrat wins, he loses because the state legislature, wants to overturn it because they don't like the outcome of the election. Kind of like what Trump was trying to get them to do when he for his presidential campaign. And then another silly, just blatantly racist law that because especially in black polling places, because I don't know, maybe because people travel from different locations or there are not enough locations, people are standing in line. So activist groups or people who are there to support black voters can't even give them water. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. We have Maurice from North Philadelphia. Hello, good morning.
All right, good morning. I wanted to make a couple points. I'd like to ask you a question. One, I love what's going on in Georgia. That's the blueprint from Dr. Leon Sullivan, economic principles, to boycott when they don't serve you correctly. So that's the first great thing. The second great thing, watching that South Carolina game last night, the referees did something you're not supposed to do. They gave advantage to the other team when they didn't call the kick ball, which was a violation.
Yeah.
Then you turn around.
I remember that play. Yep.
And that's a vantage play. You give them a vantage play. Then you turn around on a fast break. You let the player push the player in the back that took her from the basket on a fast break late in the game when Brink pushed Bill in the back. It took away from the back. That's two advantage plays that you took from South Carolina and you gave to Stanford. Although South Carolina still should have won that game. But when you take the fight of freedom, everything is stacked against you. The stand that Dawn's taken, speaking up for Black America. So you got to come out. And then Dawn, the offense, she don't allow her offense design where she don't give her players one-on-one potential. So the big girl, time she pivot to go to the basket, she run into her own players and she run into weak side help. If you watch Stanford spread the floor where they can cut back door to make room for their players to operate. And Dawn got to make those adjustments. These are the same things she's running in every year. She's not making the correct adjustment. Last but least, I asked you to talk about Philadelphia sports. And you said the Big Five. I'm not talking about the Big Five. I'm talking about Philadelphia sports in general. Some of the best boxing trainers, whether it was for Joe Louis or whoever, came out of Philadelphia. They trained
no doubt about that.
They trained Eddie Futz. They trained Bill Miller. And when you look at Floyd Mayweather's defensive style, and you look at James Toney's defensive style, that's the Georgie Benton Philly shell. But I think those stories need to be highlighted about the true history of Philly all the way through, because we were the first of many things. And when we talk about Michael Jordan and LeBron James and these guys being the great, because Philly don't talk about Wilt Chamberlain, they trying to erase Wilt Chamberlain's record. And that's impossible to do when a man holds 200 records that can't be touched. So I think that's a disservice for Philly for not keeping Wilt Chamberlain history alive and letting somebody else put the narrative about LeBron and Michael. And I like the comment that Bill Russell said last week. How can you say about great if it's about rings? I have 11 of them. So how am I not in this conversation? And I like Bill Russell doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, thanks for the call. No, I agree with you. I mean, Bill Russell won 11. And Bill Russell, not only won, he was a coach when he won one of them too, and a player. I mean, he was, he was a quintessential winner. And then yet we don't in this ever mention of Bill Russell, who is, was just one of the greatest. You got to put him and Wilt Chamberlain up there in that conversation. I know in this modern era, we don't like to talk about new school or old school people, And sometimes, I've had people get on me if I mention something from the 1960s or 70s or some other thing, because maybe people don't feel as relevant today. But you gotta respect the pioneers of sport. You gotta respect the game. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the call in today 215-634-8065. 1-866-361-0900. You want to talk to us about anything today about our guests. At the bottom of the hour, I'm going to have Matt Larry from Football Stories magazine talk about the NFL draft, the Eagles' peculiar situation, why they went from the 6th pick to the 12th pick. And we're going to talk about that today. What your thoughts on that? And the 76ers. Jordan, the 76ers won 8 out of their last 10 games, if I'm correct. If I'm wrong, I mean, check my numbers since
I think
coming out of
without
the All-Star break.
Oh, coming from the All-Star break.
Yeah,
that's about right. Yeah,
so they've won. Like I say again, I mean, they've done it without Joel Embiid. Mm-hmm. They've done this without Joel Embiid. The last 10 games without Joel Embiid, everybody's stepping up and cooking. It's a different guy just every time. And, it's a funny thing. Some of the games, I was, I had gotten to I wouldn't say a debate, a slight disagreement with one of the daily reporters in town, because I was saying that some of the games that the Sixers have won, like especially in the fourth quarter when other teams have made a run on them late in games, last year they wouldn't have won that game. A couple of years ago, even a couple of years ago when they, when they had Jimmy Butler. Although when they had Jimmy Butler, they played a whole lot better in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
But more often than not, and correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, I think they lost more of those games under Brett Brown.
Yep,
I think
right.
they lost more. I mean, I don't know all the exact numbers. And the reporter from the Inquirer Daily News was trying to tell me, no, that was not the case. And I'm like, okay. And last season they did, but I think they lost. Maybe the numbers are different. But it seems to me, from what I've been watching the last couple of years, and I don't know if I've seen every game, but they more often than not lost those close games. Other teams made runs late in games, even when bad teams that they played made runs. It seemed that way. I have to. I don't know all my numbers apparently, and so I don't know all the numbers of that. But just watching games over the last couple of years, they lost games like that.
Yeah,
I mean, they just.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, most of the games that we lose pretty much that are like close. It's all to the good teams, than like the bad ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But now they're winning those games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're winning those games. And let me ask: were you disappointed about the trade deadline? Were you disappointed that they didn't make a move at the trade deadline? They got. Wait a second. Let me.
George Hill.
They got George Hill.
I'm not disappointed at all. I like that pickup. Nothing too crazy. Not like another superstar like Zach LaVine or Kyle Lowry, where we had to give up Matisse and Tyrese. Because like if we keep Tyrese and Matisse, like they got some huge upside. So I wouldn't even give that up in a few years.
No, and nor should they. They should not give up. I mean, George Hill, I think, is a good player.
Yeah, and the other thing is he's going to groom up Tyrese. He's going to develop him.
Yeah, and I think so. And then, too, I don't know if you mortgage your future to win now.
Right.
To trade for a 34-year-old point guard with an expiring contract. I see the other side of that. I would have liked to have gotten Kyle Lowry here, though. I mean, a lot of people said, but the more you look into it, and the more you look at, because I know I had Jack McCaffrey on a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about that. But the more you look at to me, there's a downside of mortgage. Now, if you knew you were gonna sign a younger player, a younger and better player to a long-term contract, I mean, you might pull the trigger on that, but I don't like mortgaging the future. I don't like giving away young players.
No, and especially for a player who's basically has an expiring contract and is going to want an expensive extension.
Right.
So
that's going to basically, you're right about that. He's going to want an extension, and he's going to want to make you. He's going to, that's going to prevent you from really developing your players. I mean, I know it's win now, but let me ask you this question, though, Jordan. You think they can beat the New Jersey Nets? Can they beat the Nets?
It's going to be tough, but I think so. Because, I kind of look at it this way. Blake Griffin and LaMarcus, they're basically up there in age. They're not like the same players they used to be. And then you got KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. Not that you're going to slow them down, but at least we have something that, well, not that you're going to stop them, but we have the tools we can, like, slow them down. And we can keep up with them with scoring, too. Because, like, when I look at their previous games, too, most of their games been pretty close, so I'm not really impressed at all.
Yeah. They haven't really overwhelmed and blowing people out. Now, granted, KD's not back on the floor yet. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there are some people would point to the fact that there are issues with chemistry with them. Will they have the I think the Sixers, if nothing else, have good chemistry. I mean, guys coming off the bench. I mean, Dwight Howard has played well. A lot of guys are doing, like I say, having Seth Curry, Danny Green, guys who can bomb away. Matisse Thybulle is a defensive specialist.
That's right. Here's a fun fact about Matisse, too. I think I read somewhere where he had like 35 blocked jump shots total.
Wow.
This season.
And
35.
so, and the analogy that I'm going to draw, I don't know if you, I don't think you were old enough to remember this, but back in the 90s, this was college basketball, granted.
Mm-hmm.
In the 90s, Duke, after they were blown out by UNLV in the national championship game, 1990, they recruited Grant Hill. And Grant Hill gave them the athleticism. They put him on Larry Johnson. And now they didn't stop Larry Johnson in that game. And when they played the next year, they certainly neutralized them. And Duke came away with a 2-point win. I mean, and so the analogy I like is Matisse Thybulle trying to maybe figure out a way to neutralize KD. That's a tall order. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about that analogy. I'm playing with that analogy. Two different years and two different levels of the sport, but could mark. I mean, kind of like the way Andre Iguodala kind of slowed down LeBron James in the finals a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, a few years back. So, I mean, sometimes you need to ask. I mean, you're not going to stop Kevin Durant. I mean, Kevin Durant. I mean, is the man. I'm convinced. I think he's the second best player when he's healthy in the NBA. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, at the same time, it's going to be tough. Now, Kevin Durant got in some trouble this week regarding some homophobia. I have not looked into the circumstances of that, but looking at that, because a lot of times when that happens, I'm kind of like, come on, guys. I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to go. You didn't have to go there. You did not have to go there. Didn't have to go there. Whatever it was, I don't know. I didn't look into it yet, but come on, man. Come on, you got to grow up. We can't. Like I say again, and you can't go around disparaging people. Our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters who watch sports and just as much as anybody, and it's just, come on, we got to stop this. And it's not, and all it is political correctness. No, it's not. You don't have the right to disparage people. You just don't. I mean, you can't. You shouldn't do that. We got enough of that going on.
Yeah, it's not necessary. Not necessary at all.
It's not necessary. It's not nice. But in any event, we got to go to break. So at the bottom of the hour, we're going to bring in my man Matt Santalari from Football Stories and Magazines. We got to talk some football. We got some Eagles and draft is coming up by the end of this month. We got to get that going. So you listen to 96.1 FM, down to AM WURD. The Chris Murray Report will be right back.
At Bank of America, we believe in the power of collaboration to create jobs and fuel economic opportunity. That's why we're working with local organizations to help people get the skills they need and build a growing pipeline of talent.
I'm Jim Dever, Bank of America Greater Philadelphia Market President. Our partnership with Philadelphia Youth Network is just one way we're taking action to help more members of our community. What would you like the power to do?
Bank of America N.A., member FDIC, equal credit opportunity lender.
Hey, WURD family! Have you heard of the new Go to Know campaign? If not, here is the deal. WURD Radio has partnered with the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, Penn Medicine, LabCorp, and the Independence Blue Cross Foundation to present the Go to Know Fit Kit Screening Campaign. The Go to Know campaign is an at-home screening test for colon cancer. Yup, you heard me right. You can take your own stool sample and mail it back for testing. Did you know colon cancer, if caught early, is 100% preventable? African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. Plus, it is recommended you get screened if you are 45 years of age or older. So for the next 6 months, you can go to wordradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. It's that simple. Again, just go to wordradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and request your free at-home screening test. That's it. Go to Know today.
Family Therapy Vignette Moments with Dr. Lucille Ijoy.
A vignette for Cody Anderson. It's a wrap. I said it's a wrap. I think Cody would approve. It's called That's Cody. C-O-D-Y. That's Cody. C-O-D-Y. C is for compassion. That's Cody. O is for outstanding. That's Cody. D is for devoted to family, doing good in the community. That's Cody. That's Cody. Oh, that's Cody. Y is you can do it. Encourager. That's Cody. A real encourager. And last but not least, radio icon. That's Cody. That's Cody. Yeah, that's a wrap. That's Cody. That's Cody.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Hat, bro.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we are back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have with me on the set, with me on the show is my man Matt Santalari from Football Stories, the magazine, and we have got to talk about the NFL draft, which is coming up in the next month or so. And because it is coming up, one of the things that we're wondering, what in the heck are the Philadelphia Eagles going to do in this draft? What are they going to do? We thought that at the sixth position, they would probably draft Avonte Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, or Jamar Chase, who I think is the best receiver in this draft, if they're going to draft anybody. But they've moved to the 12th position, and here to sort this all out, Matt Sanders from Football Stories and Magazine. Matt, what's your take on this, man? Because I think one signal the folks are sending is that they're going to commit to Jalen Hurts at least for a year. And if he doesn't pan out, they have other draft choices for next year. They can get a quarterback. But what's your take on this?
Yeah, so, pretty crazy circumstances there. I mean, that trade definitely is more reminiscent of something you would see happen on draft day, but for it to happen again a whole month prior, kind of tells you, both, or I would say all three, the Dolphins, the Niners, and the Eagles have probably been working on something here to kind of one of those teams move up to that 3 spot for a little while now. So the Eagles make the move back. They look at the value to be able to pick up an additional first-round pick next year. Also, the big one that a lot of people are missing was be able to get a 4th-round pick this year, which they didn't have. They were going to have like almost 100 selections in between picks in the 3rd round until they picked in the 5th. So at least they get somewhere in the middle there. I mean, we know this Eagles team has a lot of holes. So that allowed them to kind of give them some optionality. You say with the Jalen Hurts thing, about them kind of riding it out for him, allowing him to kind of have the keys to the car for at least 1 year to kind of prove, whether or not he's got it. I know he changed his jersey number to number 1, so he believes he's QB1, hopefully, for a little while now. The Eagles are going to give him at least that shot to prove that he can do it. And so what this trade basically does is it does take them out of the Kyle Pittses, the Jamar Chases, probably even out of, Jalen Waddle, who I really like out of Alabama as well, speedster, very reminiscent of Tyreek Hill, and it even might even take them out of some of those top-tier cornerbacks, J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain, who are going to be on their board with big needs as well. But what it does give them, again, is, like I said, that extra first-round pick next year, and you brought up a name of Devontae Smith, and so the draft community and a lot of people have kind of been split on Devonta Smith for a little while now, mainly because of his size, right? Like he's, 180 pounds soaking wet, playing at 6'2". You don't really see body types like that in the NFL and really survive in the NFL, especially doing what Devonta Smith does. It'd be different if he was, a speedster guy who's just going to catch a ball and not do it. But he comes over the middle. He runs a lot of slants. He actually takes a lot of hits. He held up pretty well under SEC competition. But in the NFL, we know those bodies get even bigger, even stronger. And that's going to be a big question mark. And so I honestly think that Devonta Smith might be there at 12. They might still have a shot at him. I think the league is going to be enamored with Jalen Waddle's speed, kind of like how they were last year with Henry Ruggs being the first wide receiver off the board instead of more polished guys like Justin Jefferson and Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. So I think there is an opportunity for Smith to still be there for the Eagles. So I wouldn't, calm down with the pitchforks and the torches so far. I think a lot of Eagles fans have been, really, again, into the process and saying we got to get a big weapon. You just kind of taking that away from us. I still think there's a chance that happens at 12. But the Eagles, again, that's the big thing is I guess they didn't really like the other quarterbacks in this draft. There was a story with Ian Rappaport that said that they really liked Zach Wilson out of BYU, but everybody knows the Jets are going to be taking him at 2, and so that third pick was null and void, right? They still wouldn't have got the guy they wanted. I wish they would have liked Justin Fields as much as I do. I think Justin Fields is the second best quarterback in this draft, next to Trevor Lawrence. Trey Lance, you can't. I understand it. Don't want to go out and draft another North Dakota State quarterback. That would be a little tough. I think playing wise and skill wise, he's a great quarterback. But just in Philly, that would have been a weird fit. So I understood that part of it. So again, Howie, and what he said is he doesn't notice a difference really between the quality of talent between pick 6 and pick 12. He still thinks no matter what, they're going to end up with a blue chip player. Howie's drafting abilities in the past leave you to believe, hey, prove it first. But, again, we have to, wait and see before maybe we, come at them with the pitchforks and the torches.
Yeah, well, but see, here's the thing. They have so many other holes at other positions. I think the kid out of Oregon, Penei Sewell, that kid can play. I mean, matter of fact, I had a chance to look at some of his highlights. That guy can play a space. He's got a little speed with him. I'm also thinking, everybody's talking about Michael Parsons from Penn State. The Eagles have been parched for a linebacker for years. When was the last great linebacker the Eagles had?
Jeremiah Trotter?
Trotter, and they tried to run him out of town.
Yeah.
They tried to run him out of town. I think that, it might start at defense that they need, because every year the Eagles, once you get past the front four, they get worn down in the passing game, and they don't have an enforcer. When's the last, outside of Brian Dawkins, when was as much as I love Malcolm Jenkins, when was the last time this defense had an enforcer? Fletcher Cox is good. Brandon Graham is good. They got good defensive linemen, but no enforcer. They haven't had a good enforcer in that linebacking core in years. So do you think they might want? Do you think that they ought to consider looking at the linebacker position, if not the first round, other rounds of the draft?
Yeah, history tells you the Eagles have obviously undervalued this position more than almost any other team in the National Football League. Robinson being the last first-round draft pick linebacker for the Eagles in 1979. We're talking a long time before the Eagles have drafted a linebacker in the first round. So I don't anticipate them making that change in 2021. But what I will say is I hope that at the top of the second round with that 37th overall pick that they have, or with 2 of those third rounders, the one that they have from their own draft position plus the one they got back in the Carson Wentz trade, one of these top 4 picks has to be a linebacker. I look at the talent that's on the roster right now, and you really have Alex Singleton and then everybody else. And Singleton really only came on last year is almost a big surprise. So, like Travis Fulgham, who I think a lot of Eagles fans would like to see get more run. We're really pleasantly surprised with the short stint that he had where he looked like he was going to be the all-pro, outside receiver that was missing on this team, especially since Alshon Jeffrey had all the injury issues down the stretch after 2017. We still have to see it with Fulgham. He has to prove it for a whole year. We still have to see it with Singleton. So there might not even be a linebacker on this roster that you could really rely on. So I 100% agree. Linebacker is a big hole. Cornerback opposite of Darius Slay is a big hole. Avonte Maddox, I like the kid a lot. I like his fight. I like his tenacity. But he's just not built like an outside corner, and unfortunately in the National Football League, measurables do matter. You can overcome certain things, but at the end of the day, You're 5'10", 5'11", that guy's 6'2". He's going to beat you if you can't match up vert-wise, if you can't match up speed-wise, if you don't play, up to your play strength. So there's only a limit there. I think Maddox should kick into the inside. He's probably the best slot corner available on this team. And so another outside corner opposite Slay is a big need. And like obviously everybody who has eyes understands a pass catcher, playmaker is a big need. And I would put those as the top 3 needs. I think at 12, there's opportunity to take one of those guys. Again, Devonta Smith, possibly Jalen Waddle could be there at 12. Definitely a Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota would be there. So you got playmakers on the board. Linebackers, Micah Parsons, the guy you brought up, he's a little bit more of like an edge rusher than he is a traditional Mike linebacker, but he'd still bring a whole lot of value to the team. He plays, pretty close to where the Eagles are, so I would assume they've scouted Penn State players in the past pretty fervently, so they should have some eyes on Parsons. I like him a lot. I love him at 12. I wasn't so thrilled with him at 6, which was some of the times he was getting thrown in there, but at 12, I think that's tremendous value if you want to go Parsons. Other guys who they can target again with that 37th pick, or maybe they trade back from 12. That's a possibility still too. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. He's a fringe kind of linebacker, dime safety, almost like Malcolm Jenkins, who you brought up earlier here. He plays kind of that dime backer role. He can guard, tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. Super athletic. Jabril Cox, LSU. He was a transfer from North Dakota State. Again, really good linebacker. Baron Browning out of Ohio State. These are all guys that could probably be had, again, trading back, or, again, using that 37th pick. And that's not even to mention Zaven Collins out of Tulsa, or, Nick Bolton out of Missouri. There's a lot of linebacker depth. And again, it seems funny because, I've been covering the team now for, I would say, about 5 years with football stories. And every year I look at it and I say, linebackers deep. They got to take one, and they don't, right? So, they should address this still. They have to. I think Davion Taylor, the linebacker they drafted last year, has upside to him, but he didn't play high school football at all. He played, I think, 1 or 2 games in high school because of religious purposes. And then when he ended up going to Colorado, he still didn't play too much as far as, what you would see a linebacker in the NFL play. They really just used him because of his freak athleticism. So great floor. He's a very moldable player, but being a moldable player is also, not a ready-made player. So we got to see if he can take the jump in year 2 to kind of fill out some of that role. But yeah, I'd agree with you. Again, linebacker, they got to address it. I would like to, within the first 2 picks, see a linebacker off the board. I would, if I had my way of it, I would say playmaker with the first round pick, and then linebacker with the second round pick, and then best corner / safety on the board with that third round pick. And sometimes you get, really in sticky situations, drafting for need versus best player available. So again, I'm very flexible on those. If a guy drops, or you don't want to reach for a guy just because you need to fill a need. At the same time, I think there's so much dearth of talent at those spots where the Eagles are picking that I think there's going to be a guy on the board that would fit what they want to do.
Absolutely. And I got to ask, though, I want to look at the current team as well. I'm looking at Jalen Hurts. What I've heard and what I've heard, what I've read, and a couple of people, times I've read, it's hard to be down there now because of COVID situation. But what I've heard is that Jalen Hurts is this kid who works his butt off. But then again, he did that at Alabama. He went through some adversity there. I see something in him. Our good buddy Al Thompson, we've had this. Everybody said that, he didn't show anything. I tend to disagree. I think that he has something, and we saw it. We saw it last year, and I wish that in that last game against Washington, that Doug Peterson had kept him in the game, because I think he wanted. I think that kid has a determination to bring him, to bring that team back. I think they can win with him because of his work ethic. What do you think of him talent-wise? What are your thoughts of Jalen Hurts talent-wise? What he can do? What did he do well last year? And what does he need to show us moving forward?
So with Jalen Hurts, Again, I was a big proponent of drafting quarterback in the first round in this year's draft, and it's not because I don't think Jalen Hurts can be a good quarterback. I just think that there's still a lot of question marks. That second-round pick looks like he's going to be the presumptive starter, and maybe that's not the worst thing overall for the team going forward. I think Jalen showed flashes. I think he showed the ability to be a quarterback who can create after the play kind of is dead, kind of move with his feet. The one thing I was, I guess, more surprised about was that he kind of kept his eyes downfield a lot of the time. When he was at Alabama and especially at Oklahoma, I thought that when the play started to break down, when the pocket became uncomfortable, he was so quick to rely on his speed and his athleticism to be able to pick up a couple yards instead of, maybe just, again, finding that one guy downfield and turning instead of a 5-7 yard run into a 17-yard pass. I think he did that pretty well with the Eagles. I thought he actually made some really good plays in that Cowboys game. The big play to Deshaun Jackson, the touchdown pass. When he came in the Cardinals game, I mean, he was dueling with Kyler Murray. He was dueling with the #1 overall pick just a few years ago, a guy who ran the same Lincoln Riley Oklahoma offense as he did, and was showing that, hey, man, I'm made for this as well. So I would say that there was a lot more positives last year from Jalen Hurts than there were negatives. Now, talking about the negatives, accuracy, right? Like, just pure pocket passing accuracy still needs to be worked on. Now, I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass on that because, again, he did so much that I didn't think he was going to progress at in year one. He did. And we were talking about literally the toughest offseason in NFL history, basically, last year with COVID, especially for a young player, especially for a rookie, for a guy who needed reps, for a guy who needed the opportunity to get NFL coaching on a regular basis to kind of progress. Those things were stripped away from him. It's the same reason why I'm giving Jalen Reagor a little bit of a pass, Davion Taylor, some of these guys, because, it's unfair to really, gauge their ability. I mean, Jalen Reagor broke his thumb early. He didn't even really get, any type of, mini camp training practice. He kind of was thrust into it once the game started. Jalen Hurts was a little bit of the same way. I mean, 4 games is not really enough to evaluate a quarterback, better or worse. So I understand why they're giving him the keys for this year. And at least if they weren't going to draft a quarterback to, again, be better than him, because, again, I think Justin Fields is a better overall prospect. I think, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence are. And we know in the National Football League, if you don't have a quarterback, you don't really have anything. So I understood, again, and I wanted them to go for that top-tier guy. But by at least allowing Jalen Hurts to see what you have in him, what you're doing is again, you're at least allowing the premium pick you used last year to possibly be worth it, right? We panned it all year last year for what it was, but if they're at least going to make him a starting quarterback, then it's like, okay, maybe that wasn't the worst use of the second-round pick in hindsight. And then on top of that, you're giving yourself options, because going into next year, you're going to have your first-round draft pick. You're going to have the draft pick you just got in the Niners, Miami trade. And then you're also more than likely going to have a first-round draft pick from the Carson Wentz trade, because I think he hits all of those accelerators, and that pick becomes a second, becomes a first. So if you go into next year with 3 first-round draft picks, you now have a couple opportunities. One, to package up draft picks and move up the board to get your guy that you want next year if Jalen Hurts isn't the guy. But if Jalen Hurts is the guy, now you have possible options to not only bring in, premium rookies, but also use those draft picks to bring in veterans to then take that, build for a 2-3 year window. And hey, Jalen Hurts turns everybody on his head. He looks like he's going to be the guy to win now. And now we can speed that process up. Look what the Buffalo Bills did last year for Josh Allen. Trading a first-round draft pick and bringing Stephon Diggs in was incredible value for a young quarterback. They got him that veteran weapon. Kyler Murray, who I just talked about earlier, they spent even a second-round pick to bring DeAndre Hopkins in the building, and how big that was for a young quarterback to have a guy like that to rely on. If Jalen Hurts proves enough this year, they now have options with those first-round picks to either draft the replacement if he doesn't do anything great, or build around him in a way where we can really speed up, again, what I thought was a 2-3 year rebuild into a possible quick turnaround to get the Eagles back on top of the NFC East.
Wow. Okay, Matt, we got to go to break. I want to hold that thought because I want to ask you about some of the other players on the team, like the Travis Fulghams, and also how they may use They may use the running game next year. I want to get into that. So when we come back from the break, I want to get into those with the players they already have there. You're listening to 96.1 FM, 900 WURD, the Chris Murray Report. We'll be right back.
COVID vaccines are here, and Black physicians and scientists help to develop them. So I feel good about getting the vaccine. And with new forms of the virus now spreading, I know we need to keep up everything we're already doing. Masking up, keeping that 6-foot distance, and avoiding crowds. COVID's been doubly tough on us, so let's double down to take it down. We can do this. Learn more about getting the vaccine and slowing the spread at cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Tune in this Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. for the Islam Today Show, with a perspective on moral guidance and Islamic principles and values.
Want the latest in Word swag? Check out the shop tab on WordRadio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WordRadio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk Media. You're listening to Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Independent black media.
Okay, we are back. One thing that I have to talk about with this team regarding the players, I like Travis Fulgham. I like we talked about that in terms of not having that time because of COVID. I felt last year that one of the most underutilized players the Eagles had last season was Miles Sanders. I thought that he rushed for about 80 yards. They could have run him a little bit. Is Miles Sanders that running back that they need? I understand you like to have a big physical back late in games, but I think I like to see them use Miles Sanders a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that was kind of inexplicable last year was how often there were games where Miles Sanders was working out really well in the first quarter or the second quarter, and then there would be a couple drives where he would just disappear, but not necessarily in a way where it was his fault. He just either wasn't on the field because they were really committed to using a rotation in almost an overly aggressive way, but just not getting him the touches he needs. And Miles Sanders is a tremendous pass-catching back. It was something that he worked on really, really, really big coming out of Penn State, going into the draft process. He didn't catch a lot of balls at Penn State, so he wanted to show, hey, this is something I can do. I can do this. And so he was lining up, running slants, doing kind of like the James White from the Patriots package of a guy who can kind of split out and be as good of a weapon in the passing game as he would be in the running game, but obviously a much bigger, better back, even in between the tackles, than a James White or the typical pass-catching backs you would assume would be. It was really weird for that because I think Miles Sanders is a tremendous running back. I thought that was a really good value pick that they made when they drafted him in the second round a few years ago. I hope that they use him more often. Now, I do think that with the hamstring issues and some of the problems that he's had pop up over the last couple of seasons, there is ways where you can kind of use a committee approach to, again, limit the wear and tear on Miles Sanders. But that shouldn't prevent you from getting him, at bare minimum, 12 to 15 touches every single game. And I think, honestly, that 12 to 15 should be closer to, say, 15 to 18, possibly 20 touches each game, because Sanders also, as much as, again, the wear and tear factor has to factor into it, seems like a guy, like a Derrick Henry, like some of the better backs in the league, who gets better down the stretch the more touches he gets. He finds a rhythm. He gets to the ability to do certain things, and we've seen it. The big playability with Miles Sanders is there. He can rip off a 50-yard run. He can take a little screen pass to the house for 40 yards. Like, he can do all those kinds of things. They just have to do a better job of getting the ball in his hands. Now, I think with Nick Sirianni, you're going to see that, because from last year and the year before that, what we saw with the Indianapolis Colts and their offensive ways they have used running backs, Jonathan Taylor, their first round, their first running, well, not the first round, but second round running back they got, rookie running back who, was a tremendous rookie running back last year. They used him in all three phases. They used him, as a pass catcher, as a runner, as a pass blocker. They used him as a three-down back, especially after Nyheim Hines started to get a little banged up and Marlon Mack went down. But even then before that, with Nyheim Hines, great pass-catching back, an ability to really make the running back a weapon in the passing game as much as he is in the running game. There was a concerted effort there with Indianapolis to do that. So I think coming in, they're kind of licking their chops, knowing that they have at least one good, solid running back to use in those ways in Miles Sanders. And I think in the draft process, you will see them add a little bit of a bigger bruiser back, so that way that they can use Boston Scott as more of the third running back in the rotation, not the second running back in the rotation. And I think that's a much better role for Boston Scott. I think he does have value here, but not the second running back is just not the type of thing you want to use him as. He's definitely more of that, I'm going to get him 5 touches a game, but they're going to be really good touches kind of a guy. So I would like to see them go after Ramondre Stevenson out of Oklahoma, Trey Sermon out of Ohio State, even Kylan Hill out of Mississippi State. Those guys are like, they're the guys who, if you need a couple of yards, you can give them the ball and they'll go and get it for you. But they also still can break off some big runs. So I think that's going to the NFL, running backs don't matter is something you hear thrown around all the time. I don't think that's true. What I do think is true is that running backs matter, but you need to have, again, like in the NBA, or like, you want to have, you got your wings, you got your ball handlers, you got your bigs. You have to kind of mix it up a little bit. They can't all be the same prototype because you need them to all do something a little different. And having that stable to be able to use, and again, drafting young guys and maybe not giving them big contracts after the fact is a way that you kind of stay relevant. But you still need running backs, and you need them to be able to do what they need to do. And I think with Miles Sanders, the best thing for him is more touches, but also somebody behind him to be able to take, some other touches off of his plate, so that later in the season, especially adding an extra 17th game and then going forward on that, he can still stay fresh, and maybe those hammies, don't pull up as much as they have in the past.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. And I felt that using Miles Sanders a little bit more might have helped Carson here a little bit. And because, I asked that question of Doug Peterson at a press conference, and he got, I don't know, I guess he got a little flippant with me, and he said something along the lines of, yeah, that's a great idea. And I'm like, as if, well, okay. And now if I'm asking a dumb question about that, it did hurt them last year, though. I mean, not using this, because I think that would have taken some pressure off of Carson Wentz. I mean, I didn't really understand the play calling last year, and that was a function of Carson changing the plays, or him and Doug Peterson. After all, from what I understand, they didn't speak for a long time. So I'm wondering, will this be a year? I mean, even though I think he got hurt in the end. Even Alshon Jeffrey, I mean, there was an Alshon Jeffrey sighting in the Green Bay game when Jalen Hurts found him. And so I'm wondering how much, will these guys, will J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, although they should have picked DK Metcalf, but I'm still wondering how good these guys are if given the right, if you're put in right situations. I mean, on the basketball end, we saw how good Tobias Harris is, having Doc Rivers as his coach. So how much will coaching factor in seeing how good these guys are? Taking COVID, there's still the restrictions as a given, but how much will we see of these guys? How much was that just a function of just Carson not finding these guys? Because we can say they should have drafted Justin Jefferson. I say that all the time. But at the same time, with Justin Jefferson gotten the kind of run he got in Minnesota, in Philadelphia, with the murky quarterback situation we had here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point there too, and that's definitely one that I bring up all the time, because it's like, when it comes to players, we can know who they are coming out of college. We can know how good they are, what the talent level is. But ultimately, destination and where they end up really does decide and dictate how good of an NFL player they're going to be. Because, given a certain scheme or being asked to do things that are outside of their comfort zone, it might not bring out the same player we saw in college, right? That was worthy of a first-round pick. And so that's a tough one there, which I hope, at least with Jalen Reagor, on the opposite end of the Justin Jefferson thing, that's not the fact, that he is a good player. He is somebody who can be a big contributor going forward. He just does need, again, better coaching and a clear role. right? With Arcega-Whiteside, there was the tough part when he came in as a rookie, where they were trying to cross-train him at the X to Z positions and kind of mix him into the slot and all these other different spots. And it's like, hey, man, maybe just learn one, and then we'll go from there, right? And so with Jalen Reagor, it seemed like it was a little bit of that same kind of thing, and then the thumb issue popped up, and then he really went backwards on the learning curve. And so I think he can kind of, get back to that. And then speaking on here, Miles Sanderson, you even kind of said it. Doug Peterson was probably more upset with Carson changing the calls all the time at the line, and the way he answered your question was probably maybe even a slight dig at Carson, like, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. Hopefully you're listening, Carson. Stop, mixing up my play calls, because it was really tough to evaluate. Yeah, because it was really tough to evaluate it on a whole, because, how much of the play calling was Doug, how much was Carson changing it. I guess we'll never know, which is, I guess why both of them are out the door, and we're starting over fresh with everything going forward. When it comes to, again, with Travis Fulgham and those guys that we want to see, get some run, again, this offseason, and I know they've kind of started off with the virtual meetings and saying, like, that's what we're going to start off with, but we're planning on getting players into mini camps, into training camps, rookie mini camp, rookie training camp, all that stuff's going to run, OTAs, all that stuff. We're going to do in-person activities. If that is the case, and again, obviously we want them to do it safe as possible. Everybody understands how big the pandemic has been and how detrimental it's been to everywhere across the country. We want to make sure everyone's safe, including the athletes who are entertaining us and kind of maybe keeping our mind off of certain things like that are kind of going around. And we know how big sports are for the mental health, but we also want to make sure the physical health is there too. And the NFL has done, to its credit, a pretty bang-up job all the way through and through of dealing with the COVID issue. So I hope that they continue to do that, and they, again, bring these guys in-house, because it is just so much tougher. It's just like what it is now. Like, think about if you have a child who's in school learning through Zoom classes versus in-person classes, it is a lot tougher to grasp the material. It's a lot tougher for the teacher to teach the material. When it comes to, the same...
to that.
Exactly, so when it comes to that, when it comes to these NFL players, even though they're supposed to be professionals, they still need the coaching, the tools, the playbook, the schemes, everything to play at that level come Sunday. If that's not being given in a hands-on kind of role, it's tough for them to grasp it. If the coaches who, let's face it, most of these coaches for 30, 40, however long they've been coaching for, have always done things in person, hands-on, and now they're having to kind of relearn how to do it virtually. It's tough for them to get that information across as well. So that's why, like, I look at 2020, and there's also there is some things to take away from it as saying, hey, this is pointing in a good direction or a bad direction. But a lot of it we almost have to throw out the window and just say, okay, we've got a new coaching staff. For the most part, a really young, moldable roster. We have to give them a chance to prove themselves in 2021 before we rush to too many judgments. We just hoped, again, that guys like Reagor and Fulgham step up. Arcega-Whiteside, I mean, I hope he becomes the player that he thinks he can be, that Howie thought he could be, that even I thought he could at least be a serviceable wide receiver in the NFL.
Matt, I got to hold you because my producers are screaming in my ear saying we had to go to break. But
no problem.
Man, thank you so much today, man. You getting it in today, man. So I tend to let my guests go if they're giving us knowledge. I definitely appreciate you. We can find you on Football Stories, the magazine, right? We find a lot of your stories there.
Yep, Football Stories, the magazine, Football Stories, the radio show, every Wednesday from 6 to 8. You can find it on Facebook Live. If you just go to Football Stories and type that into Facebook, all one word, you'll see the page to follow and notifications when we go live. And then you can see me on Twitter, at Santa Please Me. And then that's basically it, man. That's where you can find me for everything. And, thanks for having me on the show today, Chris. It's always a pleasure talking to you, man. So anytime you want me to come back on, I'll be more than happy to do so.
You coming back. Definitely appreciate you. Thanks, Matt. We got to go to break. You're listening to 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURD. The Chris Murray Report. We'll be right back.
The Germantown Friends School mission begins with a commitment to community and to the belief that academic achievement is in itself not enough. Inspired by Quaker values, GFS encourages students in preschool through grade 12 to see the world as theirs to experience, to understand, to create, and to change. Learn more about the GFS academic, arts, and athletics programs at their upcoming virtual open house, Friday, April 16th, 9 a.m. Register now at germantownfriends.org/admissions.
Enterprise Exterminators, located 4943 Wayne Avenue, specializing in lanternflies, termites, bedbugs, fleas, mice, and roaches. Do-it-yourself kits are available. Call now, 215-849-7070.
Hi, it's me, Gia Peppers. Tune in to More Than That with me live this weekend, or catch the show wherever you listen to podcasts. This week, I'm talking to Lisa Galobter, a renowned technology executive and entrepreneur, Sherelle Dorsey, a data journalist and strategist, and we'll hear from designer, developer, and city planner Winona Satcher. More Than That is brought to you by General Motors. Visit gm.com for more on their commitment to becoming the most inclusive company in the world.
My grandfather bought all of these computers for me and my cousins to be on the internet. And so, the people who taught me how to code and taught me about technology and gave me scholarships, those were Black people, those were Black engineers. So this idea that we weren't innovating in the space meant that somebody wasn't telling our stories. And I was tired of seeing the deficit. And it called for me into question, how do I tell interesting, accurate, and data-driven stories and narratives about who it is that we are?
One of the things that we talk about is how we are hired for diversity, but then managed for assimilation. And so how do you actually retain folks? How do you actually live your values? How do you actually bring those cultural norms to bear at your organization? How are you investing in it? How do you make 15% of your suppliers be from the Black community? It's not about pledges, it's about action. Ally is a verb. It takes proactive, committed, and concerted action.
You always build and march for those yet unseen, right? So those that you might not even know. That's really what this is about. Our futures are determined by our zip code, and that's unacceptable. So we have to start seeing our communities as opportunities for improvement, and as opportunities for revitalization, and as opportunities to say, okay, this is how we want to grow. I think that if we build off the current system, then it is too late. But if we create new systems and new approaches and innovate around how we finance these deals, then it's not.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Independent Black Media.
Okay, we're back. We're back on the Chris Murray Report. Man, we still have a lot of stuff to kind of get into today. We definitely have to talk about NBA. I mean, we're talking about basketball. The Eagles. I gotta say one thing though. I think that one of the problems that we've had before I get into the NBA is that COVID really we really don't know how good a lot of players are because of COVID. Man, not a lot of practice time, not a lot of football. You need that chemistry going now. So anyway, so let's talk about the NBA. Your Philadelphia 76ers, the Philadelphia 76ers are in a situation, I think they're still the number one team in the East. I haven't checked the standings today. 8-2 in the last 10 games without Joel Embiid. They're playing well, and but meanwhile, the New Jersey Nets have had LaMarcus Aldridge. They brought in a whole bunch of guys to this team, and everybody's talking Nets when KD comes back, whenever KD is back. Everybody's talking about how good the New Jersey Nets are. With the Brooklyn Nets, I'm sorry. Good Lord, I said New Jersey. Brooklyn Nets, and I don't want to, like I say again, I don't want anybody going beside my head from Brooklyn, and Brooklyn's a dangerous place as it is. But the thing is that the Nets are on the horizon. And with me is my man, Brandon Robinson, Mr. Scoop D himself, Scoop D Podcast. That's at Basketball Society you're still with?
I'm not. I actually have some news that you'll be seeing very soon. So I'm a free agent. I know my next destination. I just can't say it yet. Okay, all right. No, it's cool. But I got to talk about the state of the NBA.
The trade deadline was last week. Who won? Who lost? Who benefited? Who's going to benefit in the long run? And who's the favorite in the East? Who's the favorite? I still like Utah. I love that Utah team. I like them. It seems like whenever the Lakers get back with LeBron James, they're still on the horizon. Who's the best team in the end? Who is the team that should be favored? Who should be the odds-on favorite to win the finals and to get to the finals? Who are the teams do you see at this point?
To answer your first question about who won the trade deadline, I think, excuse me, the Denver Nuggets were a team that, in my mind, really knocked it out the park in getting Aaron Gordon out of Orlando. He wanted out, and, he's in a situation where he can go to a playoff team and benefit them, and I think that not only did they get Aaron Gordon, but they also added JaVale McGee to the puzzle. Denver is a former home of his, and defensively, he's going to help out Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic immensely. I also think Norman Powell going to the Portland Trailblazers was a move that was worth many applauses because Portland needs Lillard and C.J. McCollum can only do so much by themselves. They have Carmelo Anthony, Yusuf Nurkic is on his way back. And then in the free agency wire, they recently signed Rondé Hollis Jefferson, a native. We're in Philadelphia, so a native of Chester, Pennsylvania. He signed with the Portland Trailblazers on a 10-day contract. And I also think that the Pelicans benefited by not trading Lonzo Ball, at least this year. So a lot of things there. As far as who are the best teams in the NBA, you look at Philadelphia, in my mind, the Sixers and the Nets are still neck and neck. The Brooklyn Nets still do. They currently hold sole possession of first place in the NBA's Eastern Conference, but the 76ers are in second place and without Joel Embiid for some time. You look at the NBA's Western Conference, and, I think that the Utah Jazz are playing very well. Donovan Mitchell, in my mind, is an MVP caliber candidate, as is Damian Lillard of the Portland Trailblazers as well. So I think what's different about this year is, the Lakers are dealing with injuries to both LeBron James and Anthony Davis. And, they signed Andre Drummond, who hurt himself in the first game. His toenail came off, but he'll be all right in the long term. But, it's still very early in my mind. And, playoffs don't start till like May, June. So we got some time.
Yeah, there was a big thing about the Sixers trying to move heaven and earth to get Kyle Lowry. And as much as we would have loved to have him come back to Philadelphia, Cardinal Doherty grad, and playing at Villanova, as much as we would have loved to have him back, I didn't think it was worth it for them to mortgage their future, getting rid of young players like Tyrese Maxey and Martise Thybulle. I didn't think it was worth it. How do you feel about that trade? Was the best move for the Sixers not making a move, or should they have done something to put them in a better situation, especially with all the additions that the Nets have made?
Well, the Sixers still did make a move. They did get George Hill.
George Hill. Yeah, I'm saying that's right. They did get George. That's right.
George
Hill. Right.
They did get him. His field goal percentage is 46%. And it really does help Philadelphia out at the point guard position. But I've often said this, Chris. I really do believe that George Hill, or excuse me, let me just say this. I believe that Seth Curry joining the 76ers in the offseason was one of the most underrated moves in the offseason for Philly, in addition to bringing in Danny Green as well as Dwight Howard. What you've seen for Philadelphia, which I like, is you didn't give up a lot of costly players, like you said, in Tyrese Maxey. I mean, those names were floating around and potentially bringing in James Harden, and ultimately he went to Brooklyn. Ben Simmons' name was another one whose name was floating around. And I'll add, that Tyrese Maxey has been playing great basketball for Philadelphia. He is a scoring machine, and you keep your defensive stopper in Matisse Thybulle, and I like that. So I think that when you look at Philadelphia, they still have, from positions 1 to 15, they're still clicking. And I think that, Shake Milton started to show you in the bubble last year why he was the real deal, because you were able to shift Ben Simmons to the 3 or the 4 and really use him kind of in the same way Miami was using LeBron James during their Wade, James, and Chris Bosh trio. You're seeing kind of that with Ben Simmons, and he's becoming more of a defensive. He's comfortable defensively against the opposing team's top 2 or 3 position players. So I think when you look at Kyle Lowry, he was a guy that has been immensely talked about in the trade market since the draft last year. There were discussions about, at the draft about, Toronto, Philadelphia, and the Golden State Warriors were discussing potentially making a move. Lonzo Ball was the interest of Toronto. He eventually did, join the Charlotte Hornets, but there was an internal discussion there. And then they revisited that conversation at the trade deadline last week. The Sixers weren't the only buyers in that market. It was also the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers were discussing a package of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, as well as Talen Horton-Tucker, who's been playing very well for the Lakers this season. But ultimately, Toronto stood pat. Kyle Lowry, a North Philly native, Cardinal Doherty, as you mentioned, and Villanova alum. He stays in Toronto at least for this year, but he's arguably one of the most popular or the most efficient Toronto Raptors in Raptors history. Kawhi Leonard and Vince Carter are certainly up there as well. But I think it would have been cool to see Lowry there. But I'll be honest with you, if Miami was Kyle Lowry's preferred choice, and I'll tell you that in those discussions, trade deadlines at 3:00 p.m. Eastern time, up until 2:48, Miami and Toronto had a pretty fluid conversation, but the holdup was really and truly Tyler Hero. Miami is set on Tyler Hero. They like Tyler Hero, one of the youngest guys to participate. The NBA Finals history. He came in as a rookie last year, didn't impress some folks. So Tyler Hero was really the determinant factor there, but Miami ended up getting Victor Oladipo, who they really wanted, so it worked out for them.
Yeah, and the thing is, what I'm seeing, though, from the Sixers is a kind of they're playing last 10 games, they're playing with the kind of chemistry I haven't seen in quite some time. Even though, guys are coming up, it's been a different guy, even without Embiid, and I'm wondering what's going to happen with Embiid. But another thing that's happened here is that all the noise, I guess, white noise, black noise, whatever you want to call it, noise, all the noise about Ben Simmons having to take that jump shot or learning how to take jump shots has kind of simmered. Is that still kind of a problem, with folks around the league? I mean, is that still a way that people can get to the Sixers? Because, Doc Rivers seems to have done something around. Like I said, last year, this time, everybody kept bringing the conversation up. This year, I've not heard a lot of it. What's the big noise? What's the big thing about the conversation regarding, Ben Simmons as a jump shooter? Is that still out there?
Ben Simmons as a jump shooter has kind of quieted because the Sixers are doing so well. And I think that when you 76ers specifically, it's not just a Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid team. And I think that the spotlight legitimately has focused on the fact that Tobias Harris is arguably playing all-star caliber basketball. I spoke with his agent about a few weeks ago. And, he told me that, there was a disappointment on Tobias's part that he was not voted as an all-star. He felt snubbed. And, and rightly so, because when you look at the Brooklyn Nets at the time, they were a second-place team, and they had 3 all-stars in Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden as all-stars, and they were in second place. And then you look at the Sixers, they only had 2 all-stars who ultimately didn't play because they tested positive. But, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid were voted. Why was Tobias not? And, so Tobias has used this time to really play his best caliber of basketball in spite of being snubbed. And if I'm Tobias Harris, I want the championship more than I want the All-Star nod. So I think he's playing motivated basketball. So I think when you ask me the question about the jump shooting by Ben Simmons, I think the fact that he's not the starting point guard on that team kind of alleviates that attention. I think these days point guards are more scorers than are looked at as scorers more than they are distributors versus, a la the Magic Johnsons, the John Stocktons, the Jason Kidds, and what have you. But in this league right now, you have the Steph Currys who are jump shooters. You have, a bevy of different people. So I think the Ben Simmons conversation about a jump shooter has definitely shifted because he's playing good defense. It's not just focused on he and Joel Embiid. So hats off to them and Tobias Harris too. I think he's playing very well. And they have a big matchup against the Timberwolves tonight. Some would say that's an easy win, but you can't take them lightly. I watched them against the Knicks the other night, and they played some tough basketball.
Well, let me ask you about the Miami Heat too, because seemingly lost in in all the conversations in the Eastern Conference. The Miami Heat, a lot of people are saying that the Heat did some good things at the trade deadline. And that's still, like I say, the team with Jimmy Butler is still there. And, they picked up Victor Oladipo, and before he was NBA's most improved player in 2018. Mm-hmm. So what type of value does he bring to that team, and are the Miami Heat in that mix of good contenders in the Eastern Conference? I mean, I still think they went to the finals last year, and somehow I don't know why they're seemingly on the back burner, but I don't think they are. But I don't think they should be.
The Heat are in sixth place in the NBA's Eastern Conference. They are a game at New York Knicks, who are at seventh. The Heat are 4-6 in their last 10. And what I'll tell you is, you talked about their issues. A lot of it was the beginning of the season and injuries. Look at Jimmy Butler, who missed a plethora of games. And I think what's happening is they're starting to find their niche. I'll say this on every show. I don't care if it's MSG Networks. I don't care if it's Turner. I don't care if it's your show. At the end of the day, the Miami Heat are still the NBA's Eastern Conference champions. And while everybody pays attention to the Brooklyn Nets or the Philadelphia 76ers or even, the Milwaukee Bucks, I don't care if it's Mary Had a Little Lamb. They're still the NBA's Eastern Conference champions. And until otherwise, you got to respect them. And I'll add that not only did they add Victor Oladipo, they also added Trevor Ariza, which will help them defensively immensely. He's been working. He was traded from the Oklahoma City Thunder to the Miami Heat, and it was kind of a similar situation with Memphis last season with Andre Iguodala, who wanted out, and he sat out until they found a trade partner. When you look at the Miami Heat, Victor Oladipo is somebody who has wanted to play for the Heat since August of last year. There were a plethora of teams that were looking at him, the New York Knicks being one, the Brooklyn Nets, as well as the Miami Heat. And I tweeted this on August 31st. And ultimately what ended up happening was he was traded to the Houston Rockets because he was part of the three-team trade for James Harden. And ultimately he had to sit for a little while until the trade deadline. And, it came down to the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat. And Oladipo ultimately went to the Heat. He and Pat Riley think the world of each other. I can tell you that. And I think where he fits is just a scoring guard option. You have not just Jimmy Butler on that team, but you also have Bam Adebayo, who is, a top 5 big man in the league right now. The big man these days is very different. They're more mobile. They take jump shots. You look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, Karl Anthony Towns, who the Sixers play tonight. You look at just a ton of guys. These guys are more mobile. Taco Fall of the Celtics is more of a traditional big man comparatively. But when you look at Victor Oladipo, a guy that can score, a guy that can play both 1 and 2, and can really help Jimmy Butler, who I like his game because he doesn't really take any risky shots. He's a good mid-range player who can get you buckets and who can really turn it up in the fourth quarter, against your opposing team's best perimeter player. So I think Victor Oladipo is a great addition to the Miami Heat. I think that he is going to help them in the playoffs. And I think he has something to prove because he was hurt last year in Indiana. There was a lot of just, Indiana thought they were going to be able to keep him, and he's been quiet about his intentions. But, ultimately he left the Pacers. The Pacers are doing all right. But, Houston was not the place. Miami was really where he wanted to be. And, that's where we are now.
Well, let me ask you about the third team in the Eastern Conference, the Milwaukee Bucks. They have been the top team in the league for the last couple of years, at least in the Eastern Conference, and they have not done well in the playoffs. What have they? Are they equipped now to make a move? And how much has Giannis's game progressed? I mean, where is this team right now? That's another team that with all the attention around Brooklyn and maybe Philadelphia, the Milwaukee Bucks. I still say I'm thinking this. My gut says that the Eastern Conference will not be a cakewalk for anybody, and this will not be. I mean, Eastern Conference, and I think the Eastern Conference can be just as good as the Western Conference team. It's not going to be a cakewalk. What are your thoughts on the Bucks at this point?
Well, in the world where everybody pays attention to Brooklyn, the Clippers, the Sixers, the Lakers, there is a team in the Milwaukee Bucks who 7-3 in their last 10, 31-17 overall. Giannis, in a world where everybody wants to go to the next team and create a super team, sign an extension in the offseason to remain with the Milwaukee Bucks. 1, 2, Drew Holiday was the difference maker there. Former 76er, UCLA product. I look at Drew Holiday as the modern-day Terrell Brandon.
Right.
Can score, a leader of the team, and very underrated. Was traded from the Pelicans to the Bucks in the offseason. And I think, has really raised the morale of that team. You have a team in Milwaukee that doesn't have just Giannis, but you have Drew Holiday, you have Brook Lopez. You have a formidable team that I think on paper, or at least in the regular season, looks good. But I think the Miami Heat, unfortunately, exposed some of Giannis Antetokounmpo's weaknesses. And it reminds me a little bit of LeBron James's first stint with the Cleveland Cavaliers, where he ultimately went somewhere else. He went to the Miami Heat and developed a level of more confidence and leadership playing under or playing with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and Pat Riley up in the booth, and Eric Spoelstra as the head coach. So I think that, I spoke with Antoine Walker during the fall on my show, Heavy Live with Scoop B, and we talked about just his shot selection and his ability to kind of rise to the occasion, and he's still young. In a world today where, in today's game, he's a power forward. In yesterday's game, he's a three-position player. Seeing his adjustments reminds me a little bit of Dirk Nowitzki when he first came into the league. He was a finesse big man, and you got to go with your size, with his size. He had to go toe to toe with the Tim Duncans of the world, the Karl Malones of the world, the Kevin Garnetts of the world, and in this tweener generation of basketball, Giannis day in, day out. One night you may go against a Dwight Howard or Joel Embiid. The next night you got to go against KD. The next night you got to go against Draymond. And I think he's adjusting to the NBA. And I think, regular season means nothing. I think he's getting those reps and those mistakes and things of that nature. And I think ultimately, I think Milwaukee will be in the mix, but I think people have kind of lost that luster of, he's going to the finals. I think people wanted to see Milwaukee and LA last year, and it didn't happen. I think now people want to see the Lakers and Brooklyn, but like you mentioned, the NBA's Eastern Conference will not be a cakewalk, but neither will the Western Conference.
Right.
What you say?
You have a bunch of good teams this year.
You do.
And it's been a while. I got to end this segment, man, but definitely. I mean, this was playoff time. I know you're busy. I got to go through your calendar. We kind of had you back during the playoffs, but you're right. This I think I'm looking for. This is the first year, I gotta say. This is the first year I'm looking forward to the NBA playoffs more than the NCAA tournament, and that's that's something, and that's maybe says something about college ball. But I like the teams. I like Utah, and and as much as I like LeBron James, I like to see one. I like to see a Utah or one of the, or maybe Utah or Philadelphia. Well, for bias to Philly, but I like to see a different team. Because it's always surrounding LeBron James. LeBron James is not the only great player in the league, and he is a great player, but not the only one. Brandon, as always, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. One of my favorite people in the game and whatnot. You know your stuff, and you come here. You know more than a lot of guys I see on TV. So keep doing your thing. Where can we find? Where can my audience find your work?
Follow me on Twitter at ScoopB, Instagram and Snapchat at Scoop_B, and subscribe to the Scoop B Radio podcast, available on all streaming platforms. And you may be seeing a little more of me on TV very soon, so be looking out for that as well.
Yeah, give me your autograph, man. I can go around and say, yeah, man, I know that guy. I know it.
Thank you for the opportunity to be myself. I appreciate you, brother.
No problem, man. You're good. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, listen to 96.1 FM, 900 AM WURD, the Chris Murray Report. Will be right back.
Philly Peace in Progress nonprofit organization was started to create a positive change and bring awareness to the growing drug and gun violence in Philadelphia. Philly Peace in Progress is looking for volunteers to make a change with organized programs, mentoring, problem solving, conflict resolution, and more. If you are interested, email Nelson at phillypeaceinprogress.com or call 267-529-7255.
Recovery starts with a call. Pennsylvania's Substance Use Disorder Hotline is staffed by real people who are trained to help. They're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'll get you or your loved one into treatment regardless of your access to insurance. If you or someone you know is suffering from addiction, call 1-800-662-HELP. Recovery starts with a call.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Remember the last time your family visited the forest? It's a place of wonder and imagination for the whole family, where stories come to life, and it's closer than you think. Ready to plan your next visit? Make the forest part of your story today at a local park near you, or find one at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Okay, we are back. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some really good guests on this show today, and I gotta say, we had Matt Sanlary and Brandon Robinson waiting for John Mitchell. We're going to talk a little bit more about everything we talked about. We talk a little bit about Eagles, Sixers. I also have some lines open. Call in 215-634-8065. Well, I'm forgetting my head today. 1-866-361-0900. If you're calling outside of Delaware. I had somebody on Facebook say they were calling in, they're listening to the show from somewhere in the Caribbean. If you could call in, I gotta acknowledge this person. But yeah, if you are calling in from the Caribbean, man, if you are coming in from from the Caribbean, that is so cool, and that is so. I definitely would love to have you on on the show calling in from the Caribbean. But speaking of the Caribbean, it's a shame. I don't think we're having the Penn relays this year, and because of that, we're going to miss those great runners from Jamaica and coming down and waving all those Jamaican flags, because they've got some really good young runners, and they do have the advantage over the American kids in the sense that they live in the Caribbean paradise. Because it's warm, although I think Jamaica may have other issues, but at the same time, those kids are very talented and they win. Although I would love to see the Jamaican kids and the American kids, if they had an extended outdoor season when it gets hot here. I think they should move track and field for high school to the summertime anyway, because simply because it's just as hot, and especially the Penn relays, that's why Jamaican kids come up here and do well. And that's no disparaging of Jamaica. I mean, I love to watch them run as well. Okay, before we get to John Mitchell, who was on the line with us, before we get to John, we got Brother Joe from Germantown. Yeah, we have Brother Joe from Germantown, and then I think we have Pots and Pans from West Philly. Let's start with Joe from Germantown. Joe, what's going on, man? I miss you, man. Where you been?
Well, you know me, brother, Chris. I'm a man of I'm a Renaissance man. I'm a man of the world. You know how I am, Chris. I just want to say first, hello to you and your producer extraordinary, Brother Jordan. Before I talk about my subject matter, the Jamaican track team, Usain Bolt, I met him back in 2011 at the Kingston, Jamaica airport. I talked to him. He was a real nice brother. So we talked to me like he knew me for all my life. We talked for like about 10 minutes and stuff, man. You know what I mean? He was a good, real good brother, man. Real good brother. Chris, before I talk about the baseball thing and with John Mitchell and stuff, the Penn relays of Bill Cosby, he was normally attending Penn relays. Of course, he's been in prison unjustly for the last several years and stuff. So he wouldn't, even if he was out, he wouldn't be able to make it because it's been counseled the last couple of years. So hopefully he get out this year and they have the next year. Brother Bill can attend the Penn relays because, like I said, he's been unjustly incarcerated by racist white supremacy. So hopefully his brother can get out of jail. But anyway, Chris, I'm gonna say something totally crazy before I talk about the basketball thing. Baseball. I don't care what Joe from Massachusetts say. Tom Brady is not the greatest quarterback. I don't know how y'all keep this guy credit, but he's been caught cheating so many times, phony calls going his way. But I don't even want, man. This guy, I just can't stomach this guy, man. I just can't stomach Tom Brady. I just can't, man. But anyway, Chris, now that that's out the way, baseball, Chris, I know I tuned in late. I was so glad that Major League Baseball, and I'm sure you talked about this with the listener, that they was courageous enough to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta to send a message to that racist governor, they just not going to be tolerated. You know what I mean? And like the mayor of Atlanta said, Sister Bottom said, this is the first shooter to drop the ball. You keep hitting them economically. Because you got to hit them in the pocketbook. You got to deal with these racists in the pocketbook. You keep hitting them economically. Believe me, they're going to get rid of that law. But if you keep hitting the pocketbook. So I applaud Major League Baseball for taking that stance to move that. And hopefully they'll move the masses out of Augusta, too. Keep hitting them in the pocketbook. And when the state losing revenue, Chris, you'll start seeing a change. They might still be racist, but they want their pocketbook hurt. So believe me, they keep doing that, Chris, you'll see a change, brother.
Right, I would agree with that because that law in Georgia is disgusting.
Because the reason why you know it's racist, Chris, and stuff. Look at this. During the election of Brian Kemp, who got into the field with Donald Trump because he wanted him to change the results, do all this, and they did recount 3 times. Now Brian Kemp, who's a bigot himself, he said of his own mouth this election was fair. What Trump's saying is false. The other guy down there, the campaign dude, what's his name, the state, whatever his name is, he said it was fair. So why would you come back a few months later and say you got to do all these things for voting rights when you out of your own mouth you said it was fair? No, you're doing it because you want to appease these white racists like Trump and the rest of them. So you come with this draconian law to hurt more mainly people of color. So but we all know what that's about, Chris. It is what it is. So then I'm glad they challenged it, Chris. But I want to hold another brother John. I want to get on with you, Chris, and I want to listen to his commentary, man. And before I go, 3 more Mia, 3 Bill Cosby. 3 more Mia, 3 Bill Cosby. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Brother Joe. Let's get Pots and Pans from West Philly. Before I get to John, we'll get to John in a minute. Pots and Pans.
How you doing, man?
I'm all right. How you doing today, man?
Good. I'm hanging in there. Alhamdulillah. Hey, look, I heard before the first game, baseball, game 1 the other day, far as Texas, I forgot, I didn't hear all of it, but it said in Texas, one of the teams, I don't know which one of the baseball teams, they said they're having the whole capacity, I think it was 86,000 people they was having with no spatial thing, giving space for people. They doing a whole capacity. Did you hear that?
A whole you're talking about for full capacity? I hadn't really heard about that. I hope that they wouldn't do that now, because even though you have a vaccine that, that's like Texas is saying everybody's open for business, that's dangerous. And they're going to see an increase in cases of COVID-19. And we're right at that point where we're starting to turn the corner, but we're not there 100% yet, and I don't think it's a wise thing to do, even though I think there should be limited capacity, and I think it should be contingent upon as the vaccines keep rolling out. I think people should be vaccinated before we have events like that. There has to be some sort of verification that people are vaccinated, and making sure that, because this is all about public health, and we don't want people to be hurt or be because COVID-19, if you get it, man, it's no joke. And I even hear people
Right. Well, I was wondering, can't the governor step in and override that and don't let that happen?
Are you talking about in Texas? In Texas, the governor,
even the baseball commissioner, they shouldn't even allow that to happen like that.
Right, but the thing is, but in Texas, the governor is the one supporting this. He's the one that's mandating that they have opened their events, that they open up all businesses. It's a mistake, even though the science doesn't support it. But it's just the way it is. I got to, participants, I got to move on to my guest. I appreciate the call. Okay, so we have John Milton. John, I had planned to talk to you and let you vent your spleen about the Eagles and the Sixers, and we'll still do that. But I got to ask you, what your reaction is to Major League Baseball moving the All-Star game to, out of Atlanta. It semi-reminds me of what the American Football League did when black athletes in Louisiana, when the New Orleans were receiving some similar poor treatment. And so from that standpoint, it just seems to me that, this is the right thing to do, because that voter restriction law it's terrible. It's one of the worst laws I've ever seen.
Yes, Chris, good afternoon, good morning. It's definitely a justifiable action. And I'm glad to see that Delta and Coke and other companies that are stationed in Georgia are supporting this move. And it just shows you how far we still have to come, because this action, it's ironic that we lost Hank Aaron recently, and this is a chance to celebrate the guy who maybe will still say is the home run king, a guy who came up through the Negro League. And the irony is that we are going to see that game moved out of Atlanta due to the fact that this racism is still the problem that it is in America. And ironically, you had somebody like Hank Aaron, who was a vocal proponent of the civil rights and a vocal proponent of the rights of African American people and disenfranchised people, and now Atlanta can't even celebrate him, because racism is still such a problem in the United States. So I think that it is a good move, and like Dr. King said, truth crushed to the earth will rise again. I gain encouragement from what I see in Atlanta. The black senator, the Jewish senator, out of Georgia, two despised, from groups that are despised by bigots across the South and across the United States in many cases. So, you gain. I'm emboldened by the fact that they are moving that game out of there, and I'm not. We have always, as a people, pushed back against what they do to us in an effort to suppress our votes, to keep us out of employment. And Stacey Abrams, I think, is going to continue to lead that fight and win in Georgia. I think this will continue to galvanize black people and disenfranchised and marginalized people to continue to come to the poll.
Yeah, because like I said, one of the most ridiculous of those provisions, two of the most ridiculous, is one where they say that, well, if we don't like the results of the election, then we're not going to certify. I mean, that's got to be unconstitutional. And secondly, not giving, making it a crime to give out water and relief to someone. I mean, that's insane. That's just, that's absolutely insane. Not even beyond violating the Constitution. And I'm glad to see sports, that sports is taking a stand against this kind of thing. I mean, who are we as a country when you see these things?
Yeah, we are as a country who we have always been for four centuries. What Maya Angelou say, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. When they decided to begin brutalizing and treating and use barbarian tactics against black people going back to the 1600s, those haven't changed. They're replicated and they're representative now with housing discrimination. They're represented in the way we have, America's on trial right now for Derek Chauvin. That's just who America's always been. So the one thing we as just can't be is act surprised when they throw these new draconian laws out on us. We can't be surprised by it because that is what America has always been toward black people. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Let's not be fooled for the 300 trillionth time by an act of racism.
Wow.
America is, if it is anything, it is consistent in its bigotry toward people of color.
Right. Yeah, well, like I said, we have been fooled. I mean, although, like I said, again, we have to bring in the rock band, the Who, to talk about we won't get fooled again. I hope that's not the case. But that I'm glad to see, sports is kind of taking some stands. We also have the issue of women and men equality and things of that nature. We gotta go to break because I still want to have the conversation about the Eagles and Sixers with you as we talked about, but we gotta go to break. You're listening to 96.1 FM, 900 AM WURD. The Chris Murray Report will be right back.
COVID vaccines are here, and black physicians and scientists help to develop them. So I feel good about getting the vaccine. And with new forms of the virus now spreading, I know we need to keep up everything we're already doing. Masking up, keeping that 6-foot distance, and avoiding crowds. COVID's been doubly tough on us, so let's double down to take it down. We can do this. Learn more about getting the vaccine and slowing the spread at cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Tune in to More Than That with Gia Peppers live this Sunday, April 4th at 1 p.m. on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This episode of More Than That is sponsored by General Motors, who is committed to becoming the most inclusive company in the world. Everybody in.
Livelihood. WURD Radio's new initiative, connecting Black Philadelphians with jobs, entrepreneurship resources, small business development information, and financial literacy tools. Learn more at wordworks.com. That's WURD-WORKS.com. And stay tuned to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Okay, we are back. John, you just sent me some breaking news. Grant Hill will replace Jerry Colangelo as managing director of Team USA after Tokyo Olympics. I had to read that story. That's interesting. What's the significance of this particular story in your mind?
I think it's not. It's great to see another African American ascending to a position of authority. Let's be quite honest. The NBA's stars are African Americans, and in the case of Joel Embiid, African. So I think it's appropriate that somebody is bright like Grant Hill, somebody who comes from a lineage of being successful. You know, Grant was a Hall of Fame basketball player until, you know, injury slowed his career down. You know, his father, businessman. Grant has been successful away from the basketball courts, and Grant knows basketball. He's respected. So, I mean, quite honestly, the well of African American talent in basketball is so deep that, you know, he just becomes that person in that position just becomes the curator of the talent from the professional level on down to the elite high school levels. So I'm glad to see it happen, and I just, you know, I'm glad to see that happen. You know, it's I don't put too much credence in positions like that. You want to see more things happen with people who are working class. That's just my position. You want to see more things happen with the working class African American. You want to see, you know, home ownership. You want to see black people doing small business. And this is great, but great things always happen to great athletes, great black athletes in America, because white America has a unique way of putting the black athlete on a pedestal until that black athlete takes a knee. The minute you start taking a knee and protesting and advocating for the lion's share of black people, you become problematic to white America.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I don't want to get a little deep on that, but I'm glad for Grant Hill. You know, I established a relationship with him when I was covering the Wizards in Washington. But that's what it means. That's what it means.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad to see that. But you're right. You know, when you step out of line and they come after you, I got to talk, you know, about the Eagles. You know, early Matt Sandler and I were on the show early talking about the idea that the Philadelphia Eagles would get the 12th pick, and I don't know. My sense is that they're going to give Jalen Hurts a chance to really prove himself, and I also wonder, will he have that? I think he'll have a fair chance. He got the weapons. What do you think of the Eagles in this current situation? They have a lot of holes to fill at the 12th spot. They need linebackers, they need offensive linemen, they need all kinds of things. But what are your thoughts about this move that they've made, you know, to get down to the 12th pick? Are they hoping that Jalen Waddle, you know, falls down to that level like wide receivers did the previous year? They fell down, you know, they fell down in the rest of the first round of the picks. So the Eagles didn't take advantage of that. But, you know, what are your thoughts on how this is going to work out for the Eagles?
Well, I think that it shows a continued incongruency in their philosophy. You know, they have said that they want to invest in Jalen Hurts as their quarterback. But what they're saying is we're going to trade down in a year. But let's be quite honest. You know, this is a team that has, you know, this is a team that took Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside over a guy like DK Metcalf. This time, and it's almost like they've wasted half a decade trying to draft a wide receiver or a playmaker, you know, a downfield playmaker. And this really, at number 6, they were in position. You know, they may not have had the pick of the litter, but if all the quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4, and the offensive lineman from Oregon goes 5, or the offensive lineman from Northwestern goes 5, that would, in fact, give them a chance to have, you know, look at Jamar Chase, a chance to bring Kyle Pitts home, a chance to look at Devontae Smith. But now, and if you're going to help your quarterback, you know, we all know that the escape valve is the tight end. And, you know, I just heard Shannon Sharp not long ago say that from a pure talent standpoint, I think Kyle Pitts is maybe the best tight end I've ever seen. And he included himself in that. And he said, you know, from speed, pass catch radius, you know, he said potentially this guy looks to be, you know, maybe the best tight end of all time. But what they've done in trading down, I'll give them credit for acquiring another first-round pick next year, but also, you you have to look at who's cooking the food, and who's buying the the food to be cooked. The Eagles have not had any success under Howie Roseman drafting players. So an additional pick next year, how much does that help Jalen Hurts this year, who desperately needs help this year? And it also kind of indicates that maybe they will be looking to trade up for another quarterback next year if they give up on Jalen, who they may not give him the necessary tools to be successful with. So it's just I don't know. There's no straight arrows to what they're trying to do.
Right. So it seems to me that I think they ought to give Jalen Hurts a chance. If they drafted him in the second round, and presumably with the idea that, and I think maybe they knew something about Carson Wentz even beforehand, but I figure that if you're going to make that draft pick of a guy, you got to basically surround him with those people. I saw flashes of brilliance. I saw the ability that this kid had last year, and it boggles my mind that, it seems like if you give that kid a lot of weapons, if you give him weapons, and even if he manages the offense with those weapons, I think he will do. I think the kid, the intangible in all this is this guy's work ethic, is this guy's commitment to being a good quarterback. That to me is is basically the upside to all this, is his work ethic. How important do you think that is in terms of him and his development? I think he's going to get out there, and how difficult will that be, of course, with COVID? But in his situation, do you see Jalen Hurts as the guy moving forward?
I honestly, I would like for Jalen Hurts to be the guy, but I haven't seen enough. And I don't know how anybody can say this. I haven't seen enough of a body of work to say that he is the guy. That said, when they drafted him, the Eagles proclaimed themselves as a quarterback factory. So if you go ahead and you just paid Carson Wentz and then you go ahead and you draft Jalen Hurts, for obvious reasons, because Carson Wentz can't stay healthy, and because Carson Wentz was an extraordinary player in 2017, but we have seen no trace of that player since moving forward. It becomes double talk to me if you say that we're a quarterback factory and we stepped out and we drafted Jalen Hurts, and we're not going to give him the weapons to prove that he is indeed, potentially a quarterback. Like you said, his work ethic is outstanding from everything I've heard. So I would like to see him, and there's some things they could do from a coaching standpoint. They could give the ball to Miles Sanders, who averaged 5.2 yards per carry last year. They pull to the right side of their offensive line stays healthy. So I would like to see. It's almost unfair to Jalen if you bungle the quarterback position. I mean, let's be quite honest. Carson Wentz was good for one season in Philadelphia. He was average, a little bit above average in the seasons after 2017. But if you're going to package all these picks like people are speculating next year to move up in the draft and draft yet another quarterback, but you've already proven that you're not that quarterback factor because the quarterback you traded up for previously in 2016 basically put you in salary cap hell. I'm talking about Carson Wentz, and then moved on. And the guy who you tabbed as his replacement, you're giving up on him after a year. It just looks like bad management of talent to me. And, it's just what's going on at the top of the organization.
Yeah, and that's a good question because I think folks are watching on this one because a lot of people thought Howie should have been the one that got fired too. And then, I don't know if that would be the solution to anything, but the thing is the guys that he's brought in have been iffy so far. Now, granted, as I was talking to one of my guests earlier, that perhaps Carson may have changed, plays or something like that, and or he might have, just ignored the coaches because he was at odds with the coaching staff. But you're right. There are a lot of other little things, like you said earlier. Utilizing Miles Sanders. they did not utilize Miles Sanders, a whole lot, even though he broke off 80-yard runs, but they didn't try to get the ball into his hands, whether it's in the passing game or in the running game. And that was the thing that bothered me about this team, is that you've got these guys and talent, and I don't know if that's just what I think it may have been part of the coaching, but to me, with what they have to do with Jalen Hurts, they got to run the football, and they got to surround him with talent, with guys. Right. Because I want to see how good Travis Fulgham is. I want to see how good Jalen Reagor is. I want to see these guys to see how good and how they'll be able to help this team moving forward. But it's just that right now we have to wait until the season. Hopefully they'll build some chemistry. They'll build some chemistry with each other during the weird world of off season. But and I wanted to get into something. I wanted to ask about COVID too. But I just look at this team. It's still a wait and see. I think my gut says Hurts is going to be that quarterback. I mean, my gut says Hurts is going to emerge as a quarterback for this team. So, we got a lot to. I'll give you just one last. We got about a minute left, almost time to wrap up. But what are your final thoughts on this? And before we wrap up, when we didn't get a chance to really talk Sixers, but what do you think has to happen for this team to be good this year? What's going to be the deciding factor that tells us whether or not the team will be good?
Well, they've got a lot of holes to fill. But, as I look around the division and I look at the other quarterbacks, let's be honest, the Eagles with Jalen Hurts were in the last game of the season with the potential to knock the Redskins off, and out as a division champion, if I'm not mistaken. But the division stinks. You got Ryan Fitzpatrick in Washington, you got Daniel Jones in New York, and you got Dak in Dallas. So I think Dak is the best quarterback in the division. But if they run the ball, if they commit to running the ball and bring in some help for Jalen, I think they can be competitive. We didn't even speak about their defense. They got the worst linebacker core in the league. So they definitely need linebacker. Yeah, so if they get to 12, and the kid from Penn State is there, Michael Parsons, I would, and there are no receivers there that you like, I would take him, because there are holes all over the place. Jalen's in a bad position with a little bit of talent, and he's got like 1 year to show people, which is not a lot of time with little talent.
Okay, well, thank you very much, John. We'll definitely have you next. We'll have you on again, talk about other things, talk about Sixers and social commentary. I appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of our show today. I want to thank all our guests. I want to thank Matt Salary. I want to thank Brandon Robinson and John Mitchell. And I want to thank my producer, who has really done a great job of keeping this ship running. Jordan. I really want to thank you so much. I don't thank you every way, but you know how I feel about you. You're the best producer I've had. And that's no offense to my other producers, but, you're good. You're doing a good job. So I appreciate your help today. And we will see y'all next week on the Chris Murray Report.